Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit, find out how. Go to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. Congratulations to Dino in Galloway. He's our latest qualifier for Pick Your Trip. One lucky winner will get a chance to pick an Eagles road trip for the 2022 season, which includes airfare, hotel, a pregame tailgate party, 2 tickets to the Eagles road game of your choice. We'll be live at Slack Tide Brewing Company on April 28th for the NFL Draft. That's all thanks to PhillySportsTrips.com and Ernest & Sons Old Fashioned Butcher Shop in Brigantine. We'll have another chance for you to qualify coming up this hour on the Sports Bash. All right, football at 4. Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast is here. As a lot happening as we are, 18 days, I believe, to the NFL Draft. Geoff Mosher, how are you?
I'm good. 18 days away, getting very exciting, trying to ramp up at Inside the Birds our discussions with other teams, our intel that we're getting on draft prospects, and just trying to keep that in full gear.
All right, well, let's start with, I guess, some of the news that you guys over at Inside the Birds are hearing regarding wide receiver Jalen Reagor. Obviously has not lived up to the expectations, and if somebody called, are there teams calling, and if they did, would the Eagles listen?
Yeah, those are all interesting questions. I know that's some of the blogosphere, or whatever you want to call it, has sort of taken some liberties with what I reported, which was that, just heard from sources, again, more so doing homework on draft prospects, but then you wind up talking to executives and coaches around the league about the Eagles just naturally. Just heard that teams had called the Eagles to see if Jalen Reagor was available. So that's different than saying they're calling up with a definitive interest in trading for him, or that the Eagles are even interested in trading him. But I did write a column, last week that kind of outlined why it would make sense and why teams would, make that phone call. I mean, they have a number one guy in Devontae Smith. They have a guy in Quez Watkins that Nick Sirianni has said he could be the best number 2 receiver that I've coached. And then we know they went after Calvin Ridley. Didn't almost happen, but then for obvious reasons it did not. Allen Robinson, Christian Kirk, Juju Smith, there were various levels of interest there. So clearly if they bring in another wide receiver now through the draft, right, you've got the 2 guys I mentioned bringing in somebody high in the draft. They signed Zach Pascal. That pushes Jalen Reagor quite far down the depth chart. If you're not a top 3 receiver, you're not a starter. And if you're a first-round pick, with that kind of salary and that kind of billing, sitting on the bench doing nothing really, that's not a good look for both the team or the player.
Yeah, I know that you mentioned that you heard teams call the Eagles to see if he's available. Do they call and say, hey, is he available? We're not interested? Or are they calling because they have interest?
Well, I mean, obviously there's a ton of teams in the league that need wide receivers. So if they're calling the Eagles to see if Jalen Reagor is available, they have some level of interest in the player. The question is, how much interest do they have? Are the Eagles interested in moving him? What price would it cost? All that stuff is, for deeper and further conversations that I don't have more intel on. I just know that what I've reported. But, if I'm going to surmise something based on what I just told you, Mike, the fact that if they draft another wide receiver pretty high and it looks like Jalen Reagor is starting to go further and further lower on the totem pole, then you could see why they would feel like they have an opportunity to move him to get something. I can't imagine they're going to give him away, but there are teams that did have good grades on Jalen Reagor coming out of the draft, and they might be the team that thinks, you know what, he struggled over there. We'll bring him into our environment with our quarterback, our coaching staff, and see if something changes.
Yeah, I guess, and one of the problems for him, too, is he hasn't excelled in the other role that he was hopeful to be good in, which is in special teams. And, you look at a situation where J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is on the roster because he plays special team, he blocks. Reagor, his special teams has not helped him out either.
Right. Those are the 2 tenets of that conversation. And then the other one would be the fact that as a second-round pick, it wasn't as cost prohibitive to have JJ Arcega-Whiteside on your roster, as your fourth wide receiver, because he wasn't making a whole lot of money. And of course, there wasn't much demand for him from around the league that people are blowing up the phones that you felt compelled to move him. If you remember, I know a lot of people felt that he made the team because he's Howie's second round pick. But if you really look at the situation going into last year, coming out of camp, they had high hopes for Devontae Smith, but you don't know until you actually go out and see it, right? And the same thing with Quez Watkins. They knew he had a nice camp, but he had not really shown anything. He had only played a couple of games the year before. So they didn't have any kind of depth to sit there and try to just outright cut JJ Arcega-Whiteside. So, and obviously, as the year materialized, Devontae Smith played well, Quez Watkins played well. They tried to get Reagor to play better. And so Arcega-Whiteside had a limited role. But, I can't imagine being on the team this coming year. But you could see why he was on the team last year as opposed to this year, why they might be able to move Jalen Reagor knowing what they have now and what they may get.
Yeah, and, you mentioned Ridley, Allen Robinson, some others. They have been in the market to try to find an upgrade. It seems they brought Pascal in already. So I guess the question would be, you wouldn't be shocked if they were still looking to find someone. I don't want to say they're trying to get Reagor out of here, but you wouldn't be shocked if they found another guy that would necessitate him not being needed.
Sure. I mean, no. How could I be shocked when I know, just as you do, that they were in on Calvin Ridley and almost had that happen? And then, of course, the other guys that we mentioned, and the fact that, I don't think anybody would be surprised if on day one of the draft or day two early that they come out with another wide receiver. And if they do that, they're going to want to get that kid every opportunity to play.
Yeah. And, hey, look, Reagor has not worked out. With that, we know JJ Arcega-Whiteside has not worked out. The one thing I will say, I was having a conversation with a listener about this before. They'll say, they'll just screw up the pick. Well, are you saying that Devontae Smith can't play? Because Smith seems like a guy that they drafted and can play. Watkins, while he's not a star, has not been a total bust. In fact, he's a sixth-round pick that you have gotten some production from. So just because they missed on two guys doesn't mean they should never be able to pick a wide receiver again.
No, I would agree with you. I think there's a healthy degree of skepticism about who they pick, but at the same time, you can't not pick a guy who's that high on your board if you're in unilateral agreement, which is always a big key with the Eagles. That's the guy to pick in that situation.
Real quick, while we're talking wide receivers, Devin Allen, an interesting story, more so than someone that could probably help them out, or am I wrong about that?
Do you think what was how did
I said he's probably more of an interesting story over someone that could actually help them out.
Yeah, I mean, he has not played football in 6 years. I think it's been. He's been doing the Olympic hurdling thing. Apparently, he's great at it. That's awesome. But we have no idea. Can he run all the routes? Is he just a speed guy? Can he catch? It's been quite a while. I talk about that healthy degree of skepticism. Jeremy Bloom was an Olympian skier when they drafted him, I think, in 2006 in the 5th round, I believe. And that did not work out well at all. Some people have drawn that comparison. I joked about it on Twitter. I don't really think it's a true comparison. But, I mean, it was clear that Jeremy wasn't able to make that transition from skiing back to football. So you just wonder about the long layoff. There's a lot that we don't know about Devin Allen, about what his abilities are as a football player.
Mm-hmm. He's just a guy that can run.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think this is sort of Jordan Mailata comparable, because even though Jordan had never played football and was a total project, he was very young, right? And he was like a piece of clay that Jeff Stoutland was hoping to mold. I think this guy would be very, very, very lucky to even make the practice squad. We'll see. I mean, maybe they like what they see in training camp. But I think this is just the ultimate kind of project camp body type of signing, and let's see what we got there.
All right, let's look at a couple of other things. They lose Rodney McCloud. He signed on Friday. He'll go to the Colts. He started 13 games, 58 tackles, broke up 4 passes, 2 interceptions, but really, when healthy, he's the leader of that defense. It's really, them kind of moving past Malcolm Jenkins, Rodney McCloud. That group is gone. So what kind of safety replaces Rodney McCloud? What do they need to fill his shoes now?
Well, first of all, let's not put the cart before the horse. They need to replace it and replenish this position. And it's easy to say, of course they will. They have to. But they're in danger of treating safety the way they treated linebacker. We know those are both positions that this team does not value necessarily with high draft picks, first and second round picks. But at some point, the Eagles, when they won the Super Bowl, had at least signed Nigel Bradham as a free agent. He was a pretty good player. They had put a second round pick into Michael Kendricks. They had put a third round pick into Jordan Hicks, who worked out, right? So they were, it was after that they really started to further devalue the position to the point where last year you're talking about every single guy, whether it's Edwards or Singleton or even Duke Riley from a year, they're all like undrafted guys or project guys, right? So the Eagles can't do that because right now what you're looking at with, if they had to play a game today, is Marcus Epps, who's we like Marcus Epps. The team likes Marcus Epps. He can run. I mean, he flashes when he's out there, but by the same token, he was a rookie free agent, undrafted guy, I'm pretty sure, out of Montana. He was first with the Vikings. And then they've got Anthony Harris back, who was just an average safety for them last year, and who himself was an undrafted rookie many years ago. So if this team doesn't replenish this area, I mean, and obviously they have Kevon Wallace, who they picked in the fourth round, but it really hasn't even shown them that he belongs out on the field for any extended time. So they can't sit there and be like, oh, we'll be fine with a safety in the fourth and the fifth round or undrafted guys like we do at linebacker. I really think that this is a position that they have to address in the first three rounds. I don't say force the issue. I'm not saying draft a guy who stinks just because he's, a safety, but there's got to be a point on their board where they've got a safety and another position like that guy, like they're kind of closely rated. They believe they're both really good players. Go with the safety if it's a tie.
All right, well, what about signing a safety? There's been a lot of smoke around Tyrann Mathieu, and, what about going down that route and bringing in a veteran safety?
So I get why they feel like they're in a rock and a hard place here. Tyrann Mathieu is really interesting. We've been reporting on Inside the Birds a couple of weeks ago that the Eagles had discussions about him, about potentially signing him internally. How would he fit in the defense? He can do some things. But I don't know if you saw the Kansas City Star article written by, I think, Sam McDowell, who had a sit-down with Tyrann Mathieu recently. The story came out over the weekend. And Tyrann said he was heartbroken by not being offered a contract by the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, that's big. It's not that he's heartbroken that they gave money to somebody else, although he is. They didn't offer him a contract.
Yeah.
All right. So I know just from my own reporting, from Chief sources and other sources who've watched his tape, that the feeling is that he's not the player that he once was, which is natural. He's 30 years old and on the other side now. It doesn't run the way he used to run, which was a big part of his game. But I think it's pretty telltale that the Chiefs went in a total direction where they didn't even try to re-sign him, and they were able to get Justin Reed. And I know that the Chiefs in general felt that they were getting a little bit more out of that position by getting Justin Reed, who's going to come into the box and play a little bit more physically than Tyrann Mathieu. That's never really been Tyrann. Tyrann's a cover, run, blitz from the edge, and he's done it great. I'm not trying to knock the guy. So if you're the Eagles and you need to replenish this position with young, dynamic talent, and that Tyrann Mathieu is looking for multiple years. In fact, in the story, Tyrann Mathieu said, at the end of the day, I would have been annoyed, but I would have accepted the same deal that Reed signed with the Chiefs. Well, that's still 3 years and $39 million. It may not be what he wanted originally, but that's still a pretty penny and more than 1 year. So that's where I imagine the holdup is right now. If the Eagles or any other team would be willing to give Tyrann Mathieu 2 years, I bet you he'd be signed right now.
Yeah,
but if it's going to be 1 year, it's going to be a lot of money, Mike.
I don't know if this is like similar to the Steven Nelson thing where he's just kind of out there waiting for someone. Nelson wanted a lot of money last year, and no one was willing to do it, and he just kind of sat until finally it was almost what situation's best for me.
Right. And maybe Tyrann will do that. He's a CAA guy, I believe, or a Condon guy, and those guys have a special knack. No matter how long they wait, they still wind up getting either their money or close to their money. So I don't think Tyrann Mathieu is going to wind up signing a 1 year deal for $8 million. You know what I'm saying?
No, but you're right. But I'm saying he might have to take the 2 year deal like you're saying, as opposed to a 3 year, $40 million deal. He might have to settle for one last year. And,
Right.
You're right. Is he the same player? No, but if he's the player that he was, he's the type of player that the Eagles have lacked at that position. A guy who is known more for playmaking ability than he is for, say, tackling or that kind of stuff.
Right, and then the Eagles are in a predicament where they may think in their minds, well, we want to draft a young safety, and we don't want to be locked into a veteran guy who might be on the downside at the expense of a young safety that we want to play. So now they could play that young safety and Tyrann Mathieu and say, I'm sorry, just like they did last year with Eric Wilson, they could say Anthony Harris in the middle of the year, we need to move on and put the other guy in. But you're still paying a lot of money to Tyrann Mathieu, and I think that I think they've learned in the past, like say from the Namdi situation, that when a guy starts to really, lose it as a runner, maybe, and he's not doing, like he'd still definitely be an upgrade of what the Eagles have, but is the valuation worth the evaluation there? Is the money that we're going to pay him, even for 2 years, worth what we're going to be getting in return? He's a guy who could play in the slot, right, as a safety, being versatile, but the Eagles have Avonte Maddox. They don't want to take Avonte Maddox off the field. They don't want to give Tyrann Mathieu that job and tell Maddox, who they just signed for a decent amount of money, you're on the sideline here. So what are you going to do with Tyrann Mathieu? He's not going to play in the box for you. He's going to play the post because Anthony Harris is your box guy.
I was going to say, why Harris over McCloud?
That's a really good question. That one I probably have to kind of dig into a little bit more and find the answer to. At the end of the day, I'm not. I feel like they're on the same level a little bit, but Rodney has meant so much to the franchise, and Rodney is definitely more of a post safety, a deep safety, and Anthony is a box guy. Maybe they felt like Rodney just couldn't, run the way they needed from a post safety, but Anthony can still come up in the box and tackle and do the things you need him to do there. I mean, it could be a price tag thing. I don't know I know they both signed 1-year deals, but maybe they were able to get Anthony at a little bit less money than Rodney got from the Colts. It's a great question. At the end of the day, I think neither of them really solved the Eagles' issues of needing a young, dynamic, playmaking, versatile safety.
I guess last on the list here, Matt Corral, 5 teams, Eagles one of them. Are you starting to hear more Eagles around some of these quarterbacks? I feel like Malik Willis's name is coming up. Now they're meeting with Corral. We know they went out to dinner with Pickett, doing due diligence, I know. But at the back of your mind, is there some thought that quarterback could creep in?
Yeah, I don't see it in the first round. But you listen, when they drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round, they said, we put more emphasis on the quarterback position than anyone else. We're willing to take a guy that we see as a backup in the second round over other positions. Then they went and got Gardner Minshew last year, and people thought even that was a little bit crazy because they had Jalen Hurts. So they tell you time and time and time again that they will do homework on quarterbacks every single year, whether they got a franchise one or whether they're not sure and they're still looking around. So nothing about their actions this offseason surprised me. Now, the dinner with Pickett, as I understand it, was just with the offensive quarterbacks coach, Brian Johnson. So it's not like the old Fargo dinner with Carson Wentz where Jeffrey Lurie and Doug Peterson and everybody in the team, and like you could just see it playing in front of your eyes that was going to be the pick. So I don't want to equate one situation to another, but they are going to do all their homework on quarterbacks, no doubt.
Okay, check out the latest Inside the Birds podcast where Jeff and Adam go deeper into the pros and cons of the Honey Badger and some wide receiver possibilities, and they take a deep look at the history of picks 15 and 18. You can check that out wherever you get your podcast. The new Inside the Birds podcast dropped this morning with Jeff and Adam. Adam is here tomorrow. Jeff will be back on Wednesday, getting closer to the draft. All right, can't wait. Geoff Mosher, take care, pal.
All right, bud. Good talking to you.
All right, Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.